I think I think if I was honest, as soon as it derails, I just detach as if to go, oh, that's just
Right, no, no, but let's take a step back. I told you now that everything is everything that has repetition and patterns
mm,
in our behavior goes gets redirected towards memory. Okay, now,
so that
and I mean everything, right? Everything. What does that mean? The way you hold the sticks, that goes into your muscle memory. So if we're not careful, we end up acquiring bad habits. Even that expression, bad habits. Habits. A habit is something we repeat. Why would the brain retain bad information if it could discern between useful and useless? It can't. Nor it's very interested in doing that, the brain. The brain is much more interested, and this is the pitfall of the human brain, I guess. The brain is much more interested in storing repetitive information in the memory as quickly as possible, regardless of its use or benefit. Because it's much more interested in reducing the usage of brain rather than analyzing constantly, is this good for me or not? Now, fortunately, we have another part of our brain, right, which we can engage with even while still using memories and muscle memories and procedural memories and all that, which is called, self-awareness, right? I mean, that's not the part of the brain that's not called self-awareness, but the tool is
yeah,
called
yeah.
self-awareness, right? Um, so what does that do? As we execute things that we have memorized, then we can engage with a different part of us, which goes, okay, but is this working for me, for my benefit,
Yeah.
for my goal? So now we have much more. We have to attach in front of the memories. And by the way, we should do this even for good memories. Every now and then, it's a good idea to go inside and assess even things that we think are good, because we might find out that worked for me 5 years ago, but now I need a new tool. So either way, in front of the memories, we put questions. That's the way to avoid any sort of like bad habits from getting reinforced. And the memory is a tricky one, right? Because if you think of I know you don't have children, but I'll give you this example because I know you have a nephew, so and you've seen children. There's something that is really powerful when it comes to educating children. Positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. So in other words, if they do something well, you positive reinforce that, and the brain, just sucks that in and goes like, "Wow, this is a good thing." Negative reinforcement, the brain takes that in and goes like, bad thing, we don't like to be told off, right? So it's these two paths. There's different ways to go about doing these things, but either way, right, the brain reacts really well to these two um, these two ways of receiving feedback. The memory is really a bastard because positive reinforcement can be silence. Meaning, if you don't assess yourself, if you don't question your memories, your habits, that is a good thing for the memory.
No, see,
You
yeah.
don't even need to compliment your memories, right? Do you see what I'm saying? You don't
Yeah,
even
I do,
need to.
yeah.
Silence and neutrality is seen as positive reinforcement for the memory and for memories. In other words, what does that mean when it comes to drumming? If you're playing and it's not great, the timing is off, your technique is off, your dynamics are off, whatever, but you're internally silent about it. You're not really giving yourself feedback. In that case, it would have to be negative feedback, right? The memory, the procedural part of your brain goes like, okay, I guess we're doing this correctly then.
Mm.
So we have to be super, super careful. Every time we sit down to practice, on stage, I'm all about shut the inner voice out, right? Because at that point, you should and you ought to have enough confidence in your procedural memory that it's been fine tuned enough that you can just roll it out. On the flip side, in the practice room, Never. Never trust that memory. Never trust that, if it, I don't know, right? Like, I'll just say it like that. Never trust that memory. Always put questions in front of it as you're doing it, not just afterwards. As you're doing it, like, okay, where's my foot positioned? Okay, yeah, that helped, huh? Good. And whenever you say, okay, that helped because you hear the sound improving or whatever, that's positive reinforcement that we want to use.
Right, okay.
But it requires the fine tuning. Otherwise, the memory, like I said, the memory, if it receives no feedback, that's thumbs up for the memory.
So it's almost like active programming then, isn't it?
Absolutely. Versus passive.
Hmm.
That's how we started today. Passive practice or active practice. Passive practice looks like this. Right? Looking up at the sky and just jamming a bit. It's not really practice, right? In my understanding. Active practice is your eyes are engaging, like your senses are engaging. You're moving, you're playing, you're executing patterns and motions, but you're still thinking about what you're doing. You're actively watching what you're doing. Ideally, you're recording yourself, right? So it becomes much more of what are you up to?
I'm just moving window out the way so I can see.
It becomes much more of a interactive and collaborative approach to practice. Meaning, there's the doer, and then you've got that watcher giving feedback.
Right, okay.
If we just rely on the doer, that guy is just gonna. It's always a little bit of an. He's not fully committed rather, the doer, because again we're relying on memories, and they're not necessarily correct, and therefore, the more we repeat, the more we positively reinforce those memories.
Yeah.
It's a cycle. It's a
Yeah.
cycle. So to break those little patterns,
Yeah.
you got to use your senses. You got to look down. You got to take notes. You got to stop after 2 minutes, not 10. Because, hey, think about it. Why did I say that last week, right? Because if you're doing 10 minutes of bad practice, that's way worse than 2 minutes. 2 minutes you can still bounce back from.
Yeah.
So you need the breaks and you need the assessment. Okay, so we talked about that Pomodoro method, right? Like stop, assess, rest for a bit, jump back in again.
Which I have been
Yeah.
doing, and I've been doing too much, and I've been.
I
just
noticed
doing-
that, yes, your timer was set to 2 minutes.
And I've just been doing 25 minutes as well, and then stopping and stuff. So
In total.